How are you always so consistently composed and confident? Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that I am. Um, I know what you mean. Well, look, I'm not that young. I'm just about 60 years old, and so I have a lot of experience behind me, and I've seen a lot of things, and I've learned to be detached to some degree. That's one thing you learn as a clinician, is people are always talking to you about terrible things and the difficulties in their life, and you can take that home and have it destroy you because you're constantly exposed to the troubles of existence, and they're real troubles. And I mean, it's not unique to clinicians. You see that with physicians and palliative care workers and people who work in morgues and emergency responders, and like there's lots of people who face the very difficult aspects of life very frequently. You detach yourself from it to some degree, and I don't mean in a disinterested way. I mean in a way that is sort of allied with a longer term view. Like if I'm doing an interview now with someone who's attacking me, and I can get irritable. I think I was too irritable in the GQ interview, for example, which some of you might have watched. I think, well, I'm not going to jump to conclusions about how this is going to go, even with regards to how it feels right in the moment. We'll see how it unfolds across time. And I'll try to manage myself in the moment with the least amount of upset that I can manage. And it's part of the doctrine of minimal necessary force. Like one of the things I've learned, if you have a dispute with someone and it needs to be settled, and maybe they need to change more than you, and that's not always the case because sometimes the settling requires change on your part. But let's say that they have to be defeated in some sense in comparison to you. You don't want to defeat them any more than necessary. It's like you don't knock your opponent to the ground and then jump up and down on them 3 or 4 times in triumph. You pin them and then let them up. Minimal necessary force, because any more than that just produces a counter reaction. And so, and I guess the other thing is my motivation when I'm engaged, let's say in these discussions, is that I'm not trying to win the argument. I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to say what I think as clearly as I can. And there might be an element, one of the consequences of that might be what appears to be a victory, but the right victory is the victory for your ability to articulate what you believe. And that's what I'm trying to do. And so that's another reason to stay composed. Is like, well, okay, this person has just thrown a curveball at me. It's like, all right, so, well, I could be thinking, well, I don't want to be undermined by that, and I don't want to make a fool of myself, and I don't want to be put on the spot. And of course, all of those things are true. But mostly what I'm thinking about is, okay, well, now I've got that question. I want to answer as truthfully as I possibly can. What do I think about what was just said? And I'm not calculating the outcome. I'm assuming this is a mark of faith, right? This is the faith that people have talked about being something that has to be manifested necessarily. We've been talking about this since the dawn of time. What's the faith? The faith is that if you say what you believe to be true, then whatever happens is the best thing that could have happened. And I believe that. So that's what, and I really believe it. Partly because I believe that if you're deceitful, which is the opposite of that, or manipulative, or malicious, or malevolent, but maybe primarily manipulative, then what you're acting out is your belief that deceit will bring victory. And I just don't believe that at all. I think it's a preposterous claim. And so if deceit won't bring victory, then truth is what brings victory, if there is such a thing as truth. And there's certainly such a thing as deceit. So there must be such a thing as truth. And some of it's just curiosity too. It's like, well, I'm going to say what I think and see what happens. That's an adventure. That's the adventure of your life, really. And you don't want to miss that, because that's what you've got in your life, is for it to be an adventure. It's not an easy road, it's a stormy sea. And what you have is the adventure of contending with God in the waves. That's what you have. And the way you do that is with truth. And then that sort of takes you out of the immediacy of the conflict, the conflict with whoever it is that you're talking to. You're trying to ally yourself with something that's deeper and more profound and more lasting. But I don't think that I am particularly consistently composed and confident. I think I have faith in the truth. It's not the same thing. And, I'm an emotional person. Obviously. How do you manage to read so much? Well, a lot of that's good fortune. I seem to have a knack for reading. It was a gift. When I was a kid, if I look at a word once, I can always spell it. I have it instantly. And I've been like that ever since I was little. And so I seem to have a facility for very rapid verbal comprehension. And then my father taught me to read when I was very young. And I think it was the combination of those two things that enabled that for me. I had the natural proclivity, a verbal ability. My graduate supervisor, very smart guy, Robert Peel, guy I really liked, he had trouble with spelling. I don't know why exactly that is. People have different talents, and I had a talent for immediate recognition and memory of words, and I'm also very verbally fluent. Give me a sec here. So I think mostly it's an innate talent. Now I also do know that the more you read, generally speaking, the faster you get. My wife is really, she always read, but she's really started to read a lot since she got a Kindle. Turns out she really likes her Kindle. She reads a lot more, and her reading speed has increased a lot. A lot of it's practice. You can try to speed up your reading by reading a little faster than you're comfortable with. I don't know the research literature indicating the utility of that, but practice is always useful. The other thing is that you want to make it part of a habit, both conceptually and practically. A lot of people don't read because they're afraid of books. The books aren't their friend. So you might want to get a few books and kind of make them your friend. You can start with simpler books, like fiction. There's lots of good fiction written for adolescents and children. It's pretty straightforward. You can start there. If you're interested in philosophy, there's lots of simple guides, like The Idiot's Guide to different topics, or a beginner's guide. I read those things all the time when I'm first investigating a new topic. I start with the introductory material. And I make time for reading, and that was encouraged in my family. I always read before I went to sleep. I read, and I still do that. Somewhat less so, because I've become so distracted by social media. But you set aside a bit of time every day to read. And for me, it was always just before I went to bed. I go to bed, turn on the light, and read when I was a kid, for hours. And if you do something every day, you do a lot of it. And so I would say, well, if you want to read, if you want to make yourself educated, just put aside 20 minutes a day to read, or 10. You know, some small amount of time that you could actually steal, not 2 hours, because good luck, man. It's very unlikely you'll manage that, but 20 minutes a day, you know, that's 2 hours a week, that's 700 hours a year. You know, that's, even if you're a slow reader, that's a good number of books. And so you make it a habitual part of your life, and you decide that it's going to be something that you value. You investigate carefully what resistances you might have to that idea, because you might think, well, that's pseudo-intellectual, or there's something more productive I could be doing, or I'm intimidated by books, or I hate books because I wasn't good at reading when I was a kid and was humiliated because of it, or, you know, you've got something against intellectuals, or God, there might all sorts of resistances to picking up a book. And then you could listen to audiobooks. That's a good way around that, by hook or by crook, man. So you value it, you make it a regular part of your life, you practice doing it. And you need a higher goal too. Is like, well, why should you read? Well, it's so that you're more informed and you can think better. Well, why should you be more informed and think better? Because you won't walk blindly into so many pits. You know, you'll be able to negotiate better in your life because you'll be more informed and more verbally fluent, and you'll have a better sense of how the world works, and be able to hold your own in conversations, and that'll make you more confident. Those are all unbelievably good reasons. To be highly literate is an incredibly massive advantage, practical advantage, you know, and it shouldn't be underestimated. So